So our panel is going to talk to you about how they started their business. I think Janice will be very good on that because you've got the oldest business on this panel, right?
Wouldn't call it old.
Well, most mature.
Most magnificently mature.
Why don't we start, Janice, by you telling us about who you are and what your business is?
I was born by the river.
I told you to be a good panel.
Actually, I was born by the Tar River. And many of you are familiar with the devastation of Hurricane Matthew. That's my community. So right now, if you look at the number of women-owned businesses, African-American women-owned businesses in the technology space, then you can correlate that to the number of homes that are remaining standing in that area. So the impact and the opportunity for women in business is huge. When I left that community over 40 years ago, I actually had gone to California on a vacation. I'm still on that vacation. I went to visit my sister and brother-in-law who were in the music industry. And my sister didn't want me to leave, Patricia, so she encouraged me to find a temp job. And I said, well, no, if I'm going to do this, I need to be serious. I didn't find that job, so I created an opportunity for people to find jobs. I actually worked as a temp for my brother-in-law while they had gone off to a NIMIC conference, which is an international music industry conference. And I did not know, coming from where I come from, that people who worked in offices didn't want those jobs. I realized quickly that many of the people working at desk jobs and mailroom jobs it was Billboard magazine, by the way, if you're familiar with the company, that they were using that as an entree into finding their opportunities in the music industry. I thought if you typed, back then we typed, I thought if you typed, you really wanted a job as a secretary, and that wasn't the case. So I reorganized the office, the files, and the staff. Now, that doesn't mean I went in and said, you're fired, okay? That's the other guy's job. Oh, wait, that's the president's job. What I did was I rehired people and found them better positions. And they thought it was genius, my brother-in-law, and encouraged me then to continue to grow my business. The big moment for my business has occurred in 3 series, and the latter of which is around the place of technology in my business. I also did not find technologies that would allow me to sustain in a competitive environment around pricing and SLA, service level agreements, and still be able to perform at a lesser portion of the business. Back in the day, and it still occurs very often, minority businesses, women-owned businesses, protected classes of businesses were given collectively 10% of the total volume of a contract, and then larger publicly held or enterprise level companies would get the 90%. And so to be able to sustain those same SLAs and pricing at so much less amount of that business, and remember, we might have 15 minority businesses sharing 10%. You really had to get smart, and technology became the pathway for me to be able to be competitive, to continue to learn and earn in what was then, I think, and in many ways today, a very hostile environment for entrepreneurs or for women starting their businesses. We have a young woman here who stood when you asked about a brand new business. Aretha Battle, please stand up. She's eRev, and her business is being founded from a support place of technology. She would not be in business without technology supporting what she does. So I would say that today businesses are being grown global. They're being born global more than ever, and technology is a place in any person's business, and women who embrace that and understand the need for us not just to be successful ourselves in technology, but to make sure we're supporting that other women get that opportunity is huge. So we got to be looking for those STEM students, ladies, and we've got to be making sure we're supporting them.
Thank you, Janice. I think Joanne, Ms. Hill, since you started here in Atlanta, and you were very, should I say, when MedWeek was very important, where you were making the connections with corporations and MBEs, and now, even before we had our special vote on Tuesday, things have changed already. what do you see for a young lady that wants to get involved in any kind of business? Technology first, of course, but any business. What help is out there for that person?
Sure. So I wanted to just share as a point of reference, and it's an honor to be here with you today, Pat. You've watched me kind of grow up through this minority business enterprise environment here in Atlanta. I started my career at the FDIC. I started with a minority-owned bank, First Southern Bank, which is now owned by, which was acquired by Citizens Trust Bank.
Right.
I started out there, grew up through that bank, worked for Jim Young, and got introduced to MedWeek while I was working for an accounts receivable finance company. How I got introduced to MedWeek was through Bill Coleman, the family-owned business at that time, because they were growing so fast they couldn't keep up with their cash flow. And so I learned about accounts receivable financing, and he had been a banker, so he learned how to leverage and build in cost of doing business to this alternative source of financing, which was to finance his receivables. And so the thing that I would say to get to the question that Pat is asking me about is I think you should keep your mind open with regard to the types and sources of capital that are available to you. There are any number of alternative financing solutions. One of the smartest ones today is through a partnership that we just recently signed. Fundation is the name of the company, Fundation. It's an online lending platform. They partnered with Regions Bank, which is one of the largest banks here in the southeastern region, headquartered out of Birmingham, Alabama, I believe it is. But they offer online lending, and they turn around deals within 24 hours. They're doing some amazing things and helping small businesses like yourself. They basically take the second-tier deals that the traditional bank does not want, and they say, no, don't throw them away. We want them. Give us a chance, to dig a little deeper to see how we can help these companies. And so they've come about with this innovative lending solution that's helping a lot of companies. And if you're interested in that, I know we have slim time today. I'm happy to share with you before we wrap up my contact information. And we have an Access to Capital team at headquarters that I can also link you up with, and I will stay close to it to make certain you get the assistance that you need.
Very good, thank you. Now, for the city of Atlanta, we have our city councilman. What sources and funding process will the city of Atlanta help for a small business?
Well, thank you very much, and I want to thank everyone for giving me this opportunity, the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, because it gave me an opportunity to sort of take a deep dive into that. Sometimes when you're sitting as a policymaker and you get the legislative action items and you just, it's more routine, but now looking at it at the granular level, I'm very proud of our city. We do a number of things, a number of years ago, set-asides and that kind of thing were scrutinized very heavily and all over the country. Governments had to revisit how they deal with minorities and women and disadvantaged groups, and so we do have a very strong disadvantaged business enterprise system here in Atlanta. Under the mayor's office, we do have the Office of Contract Compliance, which is to make sure that those companies that fit within that area are paid timely, that the percentages that are awarded to them are indeed being honored. And so Atlanta has a really, really strong track record in that. And as it relates to women, the mayor, I think we have the first, and I think the executive director, Thea, was at the district, DC's version of this summit, talking about our Woman Enterprise Innovation Center, where we are allowing for women who want to be in business in the city of Atlanta. We have an incubator there. Up to 15 companies can set their businesses up there, and they link them with all the financial and business planning and all the different resources that you need to hit the ground running and to be successful. And so those are just two examples of what we have in Atlanta. And I will say this as well, when you're thinking about places where people want to work and live, Atlanta certainly comes to the top of the list, and that may be something we get to a bit later.
It is. But before you go, though, what's the process of joining the incubator program for women? This is fairly new, within the last year or so, isn't it?
It is. And to know that we're the first one in the country here is particularly exciting for us. It's in the Flatiron Building, if you know anything about Atlanta. It's the Women's Entrepreneurship Initiative, WEI. So I have the phone number and contact information for anyone who would like to participate. Although they only take 15 women, and right now that class, and it's for an entire year, and that class will end, I believe, in September of 2017. That's our first class. They still offer workshops and resources for other women entrepreneurs who did not participate in that first cohort of successful entrepreneurs.
Well, I'm not letting you off the hook right there, because
Oh,
that's
really?
very interesting. People have been talking about the program. Since we're talking about black females, is there any quota, is there any number that will be in the next class of 15?
We mean quota, it's going to be in,
We're asking the question, yes. If you've got 15, are any slots allocated for African American women?
I see what you're saying. Do not know the answer to that question. That's a very good question.
This is what this panel is all about,
That's-
right?
thank you. That's
Access
provocative,
capital
and
for
it's a-
African American women.
It's a very
I do know
meaningful
the
question.
existing cohort has a good amount of diversity of, now, there are a lot of black-owned startups in that
In
incubator
the,
right
out
now.
of the 15?
Yeah.
Okay, okay. Well, now let's continue with Rodney, since you brought that up. Tell us about what you're doing.
Sure. So I am a twice exited technology entrepreneur. Exit means company was acquired. I still have failed more than I've succeeded. That's a part of the journey. I kind of switched careers, I would say about 4 years ago. I published a book, released it called Kingonomics, 12 Innovative Currencies for Transforming Your Business and Life, inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King, where I took his economic ideals and I kind of put forth a narrative of how we can address poverty and the wealth gap through innovation, entrepreneurship, and investment. Today, I'm a partner at Tech Square Labs. We're probably the largest majority minority-owned technology incubator in the country. We bought an old Office Depot near Georgia Tech and turned it into a tech hub, 25,000 square feet of space. Over the last 4 years, we've been investing in different companies, and those companies have gone on to create 500 plus new jobs that didn't exist in the city of Atlanta. Some of those jobs are actually in Silicon Valley, and some of those are actually in Europe. And they've raised follow-on capital, which means we invest and then someone else comes and invests, of about $250 million. So Google Capital, Google Ventures, Excel Partners, Andreessen Horowitz. These are all top VCs that have invested in these companies. Today we have a new venture fund we closed on in April. It's a $25 million seed fund, and we're actively investing in companies. But and then to close it up before I comment, we're very intentional about closing the gap of high-end technical talent for the future. When Janice talked about STEM, and I don't know if that went over you, she was talking about science, technology, engineering, and math. And you know, our current president and everybody, president-elect, better get a clue, because our current president had a clue when it comes to computer science for all. I don't know if you listened to the last State of the Union, and you know how difficult it is to get something, Joanne knows, in the State of the Union. President Obama talked about computer science and coding within the first 5 minutes. So if you follow policy and the precedents that it sets in the private sector, you hang on every word that a president says in his State of the Union. And in the first 5 minutes, he talked about he was going to spend more of his time helping young people learn to code. What that means is he knows that the jobs of the future, the 1.3 million jobs of the future in coding in this country, and the 9.8 million cybersecurity jobs as well, and if they're going to outsource those jobs if we don't take them. And so we have a variety of coding initiatives where we're teaching people employable skills within a 12 to 16-week period of time. We just launched a $100 million fund that we're now naming after Katherine G. Johnson. I don't know if you know who Katherine G. Johnson is. She was the NASA computer that helped John Glenn and those boys get to the moon and back. Hidden Figures is about her. And so we're helping young men and women from low-income communities. We're giving them full tuition scholarships to learn the code and get a job coding.
Wow, that's
Yep.
big. Yeah, somebody was clapping over that. That's big. That is big. Well, Tonya, you own your own company. So give us an idea about your, did you automatically just inherit it from a family member? Or how did you start?
I wish. No, I actually started my company about 10 years ago in August. Prior to that, I had a pretty diverse career. My career has always been in marketing, advertising, communications. I started my career in the political arena. I worked for a state senator doing communications work and speech writing for that particular person. I went on to work in the nonprofit arena, doing public policy around health disparity issues, specifically how they affect the African American community. I went on to corporate America for just a minute because I realized I wasn't really that great in corporate America. But I went on to corporate America for a couple of years. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to start my own business, so I was very intentional as to the positions and the contacts that I was making throughout that journey. I ended up getting married to, at the time, a state representative, and decided that I wanted to kind of reinvent myself, and I was heavy in public policy issues, but I wanted to do more marketing and communications. And so I started my own agency at that time. It was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be, but have hung in there for about 10 years. We're a small boutique agency. I say we're small and mighty. I have about 15 employees. We specialize in multicultural marketing, B2C, so business to consumer, understanding what moves the African American consumer and the Latino or US Hispanic consumer to buy or act on something. So we do quite a bit of public education when it comes to particular causes. Those causes could be heart disease, stroke, or it could be anything as simple as reversing litter. So very consumer focused and behavior focused as it relates to what are those messages that resonates with that particular community. And so, as I mentioned before, I have a 10-year-old son and a 10-year-old business, so I am raising literally 2 babies at the same time.
Wow, wow.
Janice, you have a question?
I wanted to make a point because there's something we've left unsaid. If we're talking about funding of businesses, and so many of these women have younger businesses, whether they needed to fund them initially or whether they will need funding to continue to grow them, I think it's important we don't overlook the value of personal social capital and group social capital.
Explain that more.
Well, personal social capital, a good relationship with a good business, a great relationship with a great business, often can enhance your opportunity to actually gain business and gain contracts, or if you will, it's a co-signature to your performance, to the guarantee of payment for your performance as well. And a great example of group social capital will be the combination of various engagements you have. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and the Congressional Black Caucus are awesome advocates in a group way. Then if you get yourself certified, whether you're certifying with NMSDC, National Minority Supplier Development Councils, there are many of them across the country, or WeBeing, Women's Business Enterprise. I mean, they're the Women's President and owners, that's WPO. I think they operate mainly out of New York, but have events across the country. These are great groups to get yourself associated with. As a matter of fact, if you're looking to do business with some corporate or enterprise level companies, which many of you will be, you're not even going to get through the door to present your business as a young business without that certification. So if you're thoughtful, today, a great idea does not a great business make. You've really got to have a lot of investment, and please don't undervalue the importance of having great social capital investment in your business. I mentioned earlier about businesses being grown global from day one. When I started my business years ago, I started out of the front of a rug shop. I had a very good address, Beverly Hills, right? Wilshire Boulevard, Beverly Hills. I was in the front of a rug shop, and I made a deal with a guy who owned the shop to answer phones and learned a lot. Now these rugs, mind you, we're talking about like, you know, $1 million rugs, okay? But that was a form of social capital that I did not understand, because back then we called it bartering. Today, as I continue to grow my business, there's a very different influence that I need to have when I grow a business, and social capital becomes very important for me. We are a $3 billion plus company, and the relationship we have with many of the women-owned businesses in our supplier teams are what gets them through the door. So are you getting the feeling of what social capital can do for you? Please don't undervalue it. It doesn't matter what your line of credit is if you're a new business and don't have great social capital to bring to the table as well. And we're great at that as women, so we must learn where to invest our time and create those levels of relationships.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's good.
We have a saying in our industry, where don't pitch me unless you know my pain.
Amen.
And I'll give some
Don't
context to that.
Don't say that one more time.
Don't pitch me unless you know my pain. Because as investors, we're humans. We have feelings, we have emotions. And usually our investment thesis, and this is something for you to understand, whether that is actual physical capital or even social capital, we all have an investment thesis. Even when you consume, you have a consumer thesis. There's a brand you like to buy. There's a place you like to go. So even as a consumer, you know that's just an investment in a non-appreciating asset. But when you start investing in hopefully appreciating types of investments, we develop a thesis. Like for instance, so our particular thesis is we only invest in technical co-founders. That means you have to be able to build something with your mind and a laptop. If you can't code it, at least a wireframe or MVP, what we call a minimum viable product, then you don't get a checkbox, right? That's why you got to have people in those STEM careers. And if you can't code, go find a coder to be on your team so you can build that. The second thing for us is defensible intellectual property. There's a lot of conversation about, don't just build an app and I'm gonna put it in the app store and I'm gonna be a billionaire. No, you're not. There are a lot of cute ideas out there, but you really need to be solving a real problem that people are willing to pay for. I like the stats when it says women entrepreneurs, particularly black entrepreneurs in Georgia in particular, are the fastest growing group. But the annual average receipts is $26,000 per company. And I would say the reason is you haven't done enough of your due diligence or your research on an industry before you go into it. Imitating someone successful and says, I want to go in staffing just because Janice is in staffing, or I want to go in public relations just because our colleague here is in public relations, is not enough due diligence. Wherever you're trying to sell, do your due diligence and solve a problem that is hard for someone else to solve. Meaning, what's your unfair advantage? And then the third thing, which is something I hopefully we'll really get to in hacking today, and that was probably Natalie that was talking on the last panel about the...
It truly was, yes.
It-
Yes,
right.
you missed it, but
yeah,
yes.
she's our millennial representative for female entrepreneurs.
Yep.
$65 billion a year is invested in mostly white male startups by their family and friends. And if you can't get past the family and friends round, mostly angel investors, the first thing they're going to say is, so who do you know that invested in you and believed in you? And that's tough in our community, so we got to hack that. Less than 1%, you heard the data on the angel and venture side, but before you get to an angel investor and a venture investor, we got to hack family and friends. And so I think we need to look at innovative things like crowdfunding, the Jobs Act, the Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act that the president signed in 2012 now makes it legal for you to raise up to $1 million a year in your business from what they call non-accredited investors. These are people who don't have a net worth of over $1 million. So I'll close with this. If you're raising capital, any type of capital, social or economic, it is your fiduciary responsibility to understand how the capital markets work and when you should insert yourself to ask for money at the right time and who to ask. Like if you pitch me on a cookie business, I'm in tech. You're pitching the wrong person. You're wasting breath. Because there's nothing you can do or say to convince me to invest outside of what
Unless
my
those
thesis.
cookies are good.
Well, if Janice pitched cookies, maybe I'd invest in
So
cookies. But
Pat,
Joanne?
I wanted to, before we run out of time, because I'm keeping up with the
That's
time
it,
here.
yeah, it is.
Resources. What I've found in these workshops is people want to know, okay, so what kind of resources do you have that are available to help me after we leave today? I have to give a pitch for the MBDA Nationwide Network of Business Centers. I should back up and say that I serve as chief of the Office of Business Development for the U.S. Department of Commerce out of Washington, D.C. Our business model is we have business centers located across America to help small businesses like yourself. Specifically with regard to access to capital, we just launched, Pat, a micro-lending program that's going to be driven by the U.S. Black Chamber of Commerce. I don't know if you know Ron Busby,
yeah.
but Ron
Oh,
is going to be
nice,
driving that for us. He's going to be working with the companies that are looking for micro-lending.
And when you say micro, what's
what
that
is that?
number for
That
the
goes
audience?
up to $50,000. So that's one resource. You can find his information at our website at mbda.gov. And then we also, as well, just launched a National Access to Capital Hub that is located and based out of Chicago, Illinois. It is driven by the Association of Corporate Growth Partners, which is a group of investors that run the gamut with regard to the type deals that they look for. Those are for more equity type deals, venture capital type deals, and the like. So you can also find their information at our website at mbda.gov. And lastly, our business center here in Atlanta, which is located at Georgia Tech, is headed up by Donna Ennis, project director. She's not here today, but she also, while our target companies are ideally $1 million or more in revenues, we started off helping companies when I joined the agency 16 years ago, working with startup and mom and pop type companies. Now, I myself am familiar with that. I can talk about deals from startups to the most sophisticated, like the Janet's, who's on this panel, who's a client of ours as well, who we've worked with very closely. And we talk about teaming and joint venturing. I think you should keep an open mind about that. If you're growing a business and you have a core competency, but you're not sure, you know you're really good at what you do, and you can bring value to a need, to Rodney's point, that is a demand for a particular end product. Be open to teaming and joint venturing, because that may be the resource that you need or the partner that you need to bring the capital, the equity that you're looking for to grow your business. Those were a couple of things. And then I wanted to put a shout out for innovation, Rodney. We have a business center, a new one that just started with the HBCU spin to it. Daryl Hamlin. Daryl, can you please stand? Daryl is going to be driving our 8A transition program.
Okay.
For the 8A graduates. He's also working on a STEM initiative, specifically with HBCUs. I want to make certain that you have a chance to link up, because
Absolutely.
he's doing some amazing things with Morgan State and other HBCUs throughout the country.
I just wanted to mention, when we talk about social capital, I literally started my company and have grown my company purely due to social capital. I started my company, I had a laptop, and I had $1,000 in my savings account. Today, we are not a huge company, but we're in line to do close to about $2 million in professional fees. So that's not bad for a $1,000 investment. I immediately understood the power of being a woman-owned, Black woman-owned business, and got every absolute certification that I could think of. And utilized that to open doors. Now, when I opened doors, I made sure when I showed up, I showed out, right? And so I was prepared, and we did great quality work. We have now, to a certain degree, in certain cases, we flipped the relationship. So we have now decided that we want to be the prime, and now we're going to then bring other subcontractors that look like me, right, to the table, because we've built a reputation with a lot of the companies and the agencies that we've worked with that we do really good work. And so how do we take that and be able to build that type of reputation and that growth? I'll tell you a story really quickly. I actually served on a bank board in Texas, in Fort Worth, Texas, and I'm in the process currently of opening up a DC office. So I went to the bank board, in which I had previous year qualified to go on a first-class trip to Switzerland because I had brought about $30 million of business to them. Not my business, but others' business. So I went to them to ask them for a small business loan, and they told me they needed to wait to see how my year ended. When I say a small business loan, I needed a few $100,000 to open up the DC office. So I started to think about what social capital do I have in order to make this happen. Well, I'd had a wonderful relationship with a large global PR agency that was based in DC. I went to their CEO, told him what I was trying to do. We worked out, and he had a vested interest in wanting to make sure that I was successful. He then decided, Tanya, for a full year, I will provide for you an office space, infrastructure, and access to my team in order for you to get your business up and going. I would have never thought about that had I not been turned down from the bank, right? Or had I not really understood the importance of what capital access really means. And it's not just money, but I'm connected to many people that I have never asked, can you help me do X, Y, Z to move my company forward? Now, we can go to dinner and talk about all types of stuff, politics and all that, but I'm starving. and I need some help. And so I've really had to change how I see capital access, right? It's not just about, can you give me a loan, but can you help me get from point A to point B? And that has really changed the game for me. So I'm proud to say we will be opening up an office in DC, and it cost me absolutely nothing for the first year other than finding me a really good person to house there.
May I say one more little thing about the money? Can we talk about the money just a
This
little
is what
bit?
this is all about, the money.
Okay.
yes.
And I want to get to the money too.
This is the money.
It's, again, I'm speaking to the businesses where I think the majority of women stood up who've had their businesses less than 3 years. It is very important that you pay attention to the financial strength and the financial brand of your business. For years, I thought it was healthy for me not to owe money. You need to also have a track record of owing and paying money as well to grow
Credit,
your
yes.
business. So having a great relationship, and the important thing that Ms. Hill talked about, teaming, the important thing about teaming is that it allows you to expand your scale and your scope in partnership with someone else's money. So remember earlier I talked about earning as you learn? That's valuable. That's invaluable opportunity for you. Make certain, though, that you do value also what lenders as well as your clients will look at. If my organization, we're a $3 billion plus strong company, been profitable every year I've been in business. Thank God. Thank you, Jesus. But the important thing in my message is I thought I was doing great for those first few years, not owing anybody money. And when I went after a big contract, I quickly learned I needed to owe money and have a track record of having paid money as well. That goes against my North Carolina culture, okay? But my business culture had to adapt itself to the marketplace as well. So balance your process And for God's sake, make sure that you keep your financial strength healthy. No matter where your expertise is, if you are not understanding or somebody on your team is not understanding the importance of a healthy balance sheet, you really are looking at a way to get out of business.
I'd like to make
point.
one quick
Yes, go
comment
ahead.
and compliment. And I'm just going to lean forward.
All right.
I'm going to say this. I'm tired of going to mostly white entrepreneurship conferences and pitch competitions, and it's not enough of us in the room talking about capital. And trust me, I appreciate all of the social constructs. You're right. You got to have the relational capital. You got to have the revolving debt. That's just a given. You got to do that
Right,
anyway.
right.
But listen, it's a game being played to create wealth. And there are two types of businesses. You've got lifestyle businesses, and if that's what you want, you just want enough money to be able to maintain your life, provide for your family, and that's great. But the entrepreneurship game is about wealth creation. And to create wealth, you got to understand it's about the time value of money. If I can build a company in 3 years and sell it for $20 million or sell it for $2 million, which is called an exit, I can have that same business for 20 years and take home $100,000, but by the time we live at 125 on credit, we're still not creating wealth over that 10-year period. I think that the policy agenda, this is just my opinion, for the Congressional Black Caucus going forward needs to be on capital formation. Why do, and I just did the numbers, why do mostly white males who go to Ivy League schools in New York, Boston, and California get 75% of all of the private capital? It's about $115 billion a year in private capital that goes to mostly upperly mobile men and women. But anytime there's an access to capital conversation in minority and low-income communities, it's debt. They get equity and don't need it, and the only thing we're ever offered is debt. I had the same conversation at the Federal Reserve Board. It was Governor Fisher and Governor Brainerd there. I was saying, why are we always offered debt solutions, but majority of Americans that are doing startups have access to equity? We can't be afraid of taking on money, and as investor capital or as debt,
Right.
as well. We have to play that game, because here's the reality. Whenever we play a game in America, we win big. But we have to play it, and we're not really playing the capital game, because when we get into these conversations, we fall back on our networks and our connections. No, let's talk about, are you raising capital, family and friends capital? Are you raising angel, venture, debt? Do you know what a CDFI is? Do you know what a CDE is? Do you know that most banks don't fund startup companies because they can't service the debt?
Right.
Do you know what EB-5 is, where foreign investors are investing in American companies to get their visas? There's so many different ways. Do you know what crowdfunding is? Do you know what Kickstarter is? Do you know what the Jobs Act is? We need to play that game going forward, because it's a wealth creation game. And I'll turn over the balance of my time.
Rodney, to your point, I think, to your point, I think
Excellent
that's-
information. We need
Yeah.
you to voice that.
Yeah.
You need to always voice that. You need to tell us how we can help you voice that out. You mentioned the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. You just need to keep telling us how to help you.
Yeah. And how do companies learn to get educated on this? I mean, it's okay for them to attend the panel discussion.
Sure.
But what I'd like for you to share, Rodney, is how can they get educated deeper on the different
Talk about
aspects of this?
crowdfunding too.
Sure. Well, so in most cities, there are these startup communities that are launching. You know, everybody talks about Silicon Valley, but if you look at Atlanta, DC, Chicago, you have these startups hubs that are there. Even in Raleigh-Durham, you know, you have co-working spaces like WeWork, where you go there, and if you join and get a membership, you know, a couple $100 a month, they're free classes, and they teach you about lean startup methodology, business model canvas. Did you know that most investors, we ignore business plans? If you send us a business plan, we delete. But why is SCORE and other acronyms still telling us to do business plans? Really, so stuff has changed. So you need to get into this new startup community. Like if you're in Atlanta, look at what Tech Square Labs is doing. Get on our database. Get on WIA, the Women's Entrepreneurship Institute. In your city, look up the startup community and get there. Come to South by Southwest with us, the largest innovation and tech festival in the world. We took 50 HBCU students down last year. We're trying to take 500 this year. You need to go to like 43 North. You need to go to Pitch. I'll do a list of all of these resources and send them that you can.
If you
I'm
share,
trying to
you
get
can-
educated about crowdfunding because that'll
All right.
be really important.
So
too.
for crowdfunding, you need to look up the
need to
Jobs
know.
Act, JOBS. It was one of the most bipartisan pieces of legislation that passed. If you go to whitehouse.gov, JOB is short for Jumpstart Our Business Startups Act. Since it's passed, billions of dollars have been invested. You need to look at websites like AngelList, which is a crowdfunding website. Offerboard is another example. And I'm not talking Kickstarter. I'm talking about equity. There are crowdfunding companies that are launching that are now refinancing church debt from 8% loans down to 2% loans. There's real estate crowdfunding. It is what we call the democratization of capital. But start by going to whitehouse.gov and looking at the Jobs Act. It actually was put forth by Congressman Patrick McHenry. He was a Tea Party patriot, and he was able to get Maxine Waters, a coffee party patriot, on board. So it was a bipartisan effort 4 years ago.
That's great.
But that's a start to
And
start
Maxine
learning about
Waters
it.
has in her California area, just to tell you how important this can be to you, which is why thank you so much. I wanted to talk about it. We had a lady who inherited a clothing business from her mother. Her mother passed, was not in good shape. She decided that the brand was worth it. It was a local brand, was worth it. And after her first crowdfunding effort, I mean, she got into profit. Her business is now booming for her, and she's able to really move it forward. So you've really got to be thoughtful. When I said earlier to you about no matter what business you're in the technology business, you truly do have to understand that technology is the freeway where the money is the currency.
And I'll close with this comment on crowdfunding. Here's the reality. You can't withdraw from an ecosystem until you invest in it. Many times we go into business only wanting to get someone's hard-earned money after they've earned it, paid taxes on it. It's their private capital, and now we say we want your money. Black America will move forward when we have more investors and entrepreneurs. When you look at how, whatever level you are, can you invest in your sister? Is it $10, $50? And it has to be the right legal, the legal paperwork or what have you. But even our suppliers, right? Those who've benefited from the supply diversity opportunities, the government contractors, even going back to the 70s with Maynard Jackson here in Atlanta. I almost think that if you have been a beneficiary of government contracting and corporate supply diversity, you should be our first community's angel investors.
That's right.
We need you to be the angel investors at $10,000, $25,000,
right.
$50,000 back into our communities, because going to white Jewish men and women saying, hey, invest in my business, and you can't even get $5,000 from your sister or your brother, it's a done deal.
Let me say one thing since I'm sitting up here, right?
And I said I wasn't going to say
No,
that.
I represent an area. East Atlanta is kind of, you're nodding your head, it's a phenomenal neighborhood. Well, visualize this, in the bank line there was my hairdresser in line at the bank, and then behind her was a Vietnamese woman who had opened up a restaurant in East Atlanta maybe 3 years ago. My hairdresser wanted to get a loan, and so she happened to talk to a neighbor. And that person said, oh, well, what I did when I wanted to get $50,000, because she's now expanded, double her space, she has a phenomenal restaurant. She said, I needed $50,000, and I asked my friends to contribute $2,000 to my business. They believed in me. She said, I got that $50,000 in about a month. She said, why don't
Okay.
you
She
try
had her-
that? And my
she had her
hairdresser
own
said, I don't
crowdfunding
know
program.
enough people to do that. So your point about as a community of people, we need to be more open to that and not be fearful about sharing our bounty or taking a chance on a neighbor. I thought that was just a really good point.
Very excellent points, but I know you must have at least 2-3 questions out here, and we don't want to keep you past 5:30. There's right there. There's her hand up, please.
minutes, so if we can take a few questions before we end.
Hi, thank you, everybody. So I have a comment and a question. My comment is, so Janice, I know you mentioned being from North Carolina. My dad and my husband are Aggies.
Aggie pride.
I, however, went to school down Tobacco Road in Durham. I'm a Duke University grad. And so I would just encourage you, hear a lot of talk about HBCUs and students and how to get them in STEM. Please don't forget about those of us who might be students or graduates of, historically white institutions, because we need support too. And sometimes it can be really lonely if you're in a sea of faces that don't look like you, and then there's a whole community of people who look like you, and you don't necessarily get the same kind of support.
One thing I can tell you quickly is that you come from a family of Aggies at North Carolina A&T State University, as with most other HBCUs. We have a theory that you can go to the school, you can pay to send somebody to the school, or you can come back and visit the school, and you belong to the school. And that's why A&T's homecoming is the largest revenue generator in the city of Greensboro, North Carolina, every year. Everybody coming didn't graduate from the school, but they all support them. So it's a great opportunity for our African American graduates of non-HBCU institutions to come back and be with us.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to take you up on it. So the question I had was about, I think it's probably specific to you because I'm in management consulting. I own a very small consulting firm, and some of what we do is to provide ad hoc staffing for certain contracts, especially as subcontractors. And so it's probably a specific question to you, but a general question to the panel in terms of taking on opportunities that may not be in your core competency area, but could lend itself to being a good opportunity to expand the business or to diversify the revenue stream.
Miss Joanne Hill gave you the perfect answer to that when she brought up the concept of teaming. You see, you may have opportunity to contract or to, in this instance specifically, staffing. Team with someone who does have that expertise. Earn while you learn that expertise, and we don't have to rush to get it all. We can be very thoughtfully smart and patient to learn in that process. Don't ruin your brand by failing. Everything someone gives you an opportunity to is not an opportunity for you. And so you can ruin a great brand by stretching yourself. And candidly, most people who are offering you opportunities will respect you more for either bringing someone viable to the table to support you in that effort with them. They may have various reasons why they need to contract with you, but you can subcontract business or team business into that opportunity, but they will never have an appetite for you to fail.
Excellent. That's good. We have any other more questions?
Any other questions? Yep.
5 more minutes. There's the young lady.
Good afternoon. My name is Tosha Alexander. I'm with New York Life Insurance Company. I'm a financial advisor. I just started my practice about a year and a half in. My question is this. In my industry, when people talk about getting venture or money, how would I go about doing that? By me working for New York Life, strictly commission, I'm out trying to tell people how to build their finances. They're not listening. My money is depleting. So sometimes for us as new financial advisors to stay afloat, we need money. Let me rephrase that. We need not to need money. Because when you need money, you have a hard time listening or you have a hard time helping because all you can see is that you need. So how would someone in my industry, and we have a lot of African Americans that come through, they don't stay because they can't make enough money in the first 3 to 5 years to sustain the business. They always tell you, if you can stay in 3 to 5 years, you can make it. 5 years.
I'll tell you, you won't be able to raise venture capital because venture capital does rarely invest in startup service-based businesses. But let me give you some solutions, okay?
Thank you.
You have an entity that you've incorporated, okay, and it's just you. Why don't you start an entity with 4 or 5 people in it, and you have some co-founders, okay? And let me finish my statement, and you can go from there. Going along is tough.
Correct.
They keep saying teaming and JVing, and they can't say it enough. You need a co-founder, or you need some co-founders. Now, when you get to 4 or 5 people, that's like a committee. You can't get nothing done. But if you can get 2 or 3 people, and y'all pool y'all resources with a plan around maybe social media marketing, maybe Snapchat, whatever it is, LinkedIn ads, where you can actually allocate resources to get the appropriate leads through like appropriate life cycle marketing, then perhaps you have a chance. But going it alone, like, why don't y'all crowd together, and then why don't you ask them in this entity to go out to maybe some of their family members? If 4 people can get 10 people to maybe invest $1,000 or $2,000, that's what she was talking about, pool that money and give them a piece of the business. Let them own a piece of it. That's the thing. I'd rather own 3% of Microsoft, because that's what Bill Gates owns of Microsoft.
Right.
Less than 3%, than 100% of a
Nothing.
fledgling company that never gets off the ground.
Nothing.
And my final thing is, we teach this in the lean startup methodology. Fail fast. If you can't get traction and get customers, you know what? Close that business down and go do something else. Don't keep doing it because you were passionate and connect. We get so connected to failure and demise because our egos are on the line, and we don't want to say, well, I started this business and it didn't work out. Failure is not fraud.
Interesting.
You can fail, pivot, and move on to something else.
Okay, that's a good point. Of course, you know, everybody thinks, oh, this is my passion. I need to do this, and I'm willing to sacrifice and make it work. And to try to get a group together or to partnership. In this business, you can't even get your friends and family to purchase a policy from you.
This may not be the business for you. I'm
And
not
it's not-
suggesting it's not. You need to go back and do that old T-graph. All businesses do it in various forms. You're familiar with the T-graph?
No, ma'am.
Strengths, weaknesses.
Plus,
What is that? Oh, okay.
minus. Now, I'm not talking about SWOTing. SWOTing is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. She's at a basic point. She needs to do plus, minus, and do the math at the bottom. I can help you later. Follow me on social media, J.
I
Bryant
do.
Halroy, and ask me specifically. Mention this conference at Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, and I'll respond to you. We can hook up on that. You need some help looking at that. You don't want to get yourself into a bale of trouble. You need to
Exactly.
really perhaps step back and career coach yourself,
All right. Thank you.
So
specifically speaking.
the other nugget I wanted to leave with you before we finish today of salience is you need to develop a board of advisors. And that board of advisors, your personal board of advisors, needs to be people that you look to as a mentor who are already business owners who've been there and done that, so that they can help coach you and provide you with the mentoring that you're going to need along your path and along your journey of entrepreneurship. And you have some here today, but I would encourage you to take seriously, identify you up to 5 to 7 people that you can have in that inner circle, so that as you do hit bumps in the road, you don't feel like you're at it alone, and you don't have someone that you can share with to help encourage you and maybe even support you in different ways.
I think this has been the best panel. You all stayed late. You got information that normally, I think Rodney's about, what, $600 an hour for a consult?
No, 2,000.
2,000 his price just went
Damon
up.
John did that to me, but you know.
See? And you wealth of information here, and hopefully you'll share a few of the email addresses to some of the attendees. And thank you very much, and I think we should exit the stage.
Nice.
As they are exiting, please
Okay.
give them another round.